So today's session, the topic is Alt-Ac, careers for academics outside academia. And this is really central to researchers who want to make a transition and work in a different environment for whatever reason, whether it's in the public, private, or charitable sectors, or in professional services at higher education. We know deciding to make such a journey is not always straightforward, and today's session aims to provide tips and resources to increase researchers' confidence in exploring Alt-Ac careers. We're delighted to have these excellent speakers to deliver the event. They're senior researchers from different disciplinary backgrounds in science, technology, and engineering, and each of them have fascinating journeys about working alongside and outside of academia. One of our fellows will also be present about his experience of coupling an engineering career with academia. So I'd like to start out by introducing you to Barbara, who's going to be chairing today's session. So Barbara has a research background in psychology and social sciences. And in 2021, Barbara completed her PhD in social sciences at Cardiff University. Her research examines the emergence of mindfulness and other meditative practices in Mexico, focusing on the influence of language and the social, economic, and political aspects impacting the way these practices are delivered across sectors. Barbara has also moved outside academia, at least for now. She is our Research and Development Program Officer, and she's primarily responsible for building our early career researcher network. So if you are a member, you will receive emails from Barbara at least once a month, or if not more. This is our interdisciplinary and cross-institutional hub and allows us to connect and celebrate the work of researchers starting a career in the field. So Barbara is passionate about supporting the professional development of researchers in Wales and engaging and building bridges between communities of practice and academia. So Barbara, it's great to have you chairing. Thank you so much, and good luck. Thank you.
Diolch, Kathy, and welcome everyone. It is a great pleasure to be here today. I'm not with my normal voice, so thanks for your patience. But it's a very exciting session because obviously as an early career researcher moving to professional services, it's been a fascinating journey for me, and having this special opportunity to supporting researchers across Wales and beyond. So we have a very tight agenda. We're going to have presentations from each of our speakers. And so the first part of the session involves a 15-minute talk by each of our guest speakers. And after that, we're going to have almost an hour for questions and answers. So at this point, I will invite you to write your questions or any comments that come after the speakers' presentations, either on the chat or just have them ready with you, so we can invite you to raise your hand and ask the questions to the speakers when we are in the Q&A session. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our first speaker. And this is Dr. Ann-Harriet Watson, who is Institutional Translation Manager at the Research Innovation Services at Cardiff University. We are delighted to have you today, and her presentation is titled Behind the Curtain, Building a Career in Professional Services in Higher Education. Very welcome, Ann-Harriet. And I'm going to be sharing, you're going to be sharing your screen.
Okay, so thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. It's going to take you through how I've ended up in professional services and what that can look like for you. So this is not the career I envisaged. Since I've been very, very young, I wanted to get a PhD. I loved the idea of being able to say, no, it's doctor. And I very much wanted to be a blue stocking. I wanted to be a researcher, an academic. I wanted to be a professor. I wanted to lecture. All of those things were very appealing to me. However, I was the first person in my family to do a PhD, which meant I didn't really understand some of the things that might seem obvious. One of them being that it's not an entry qualification. So in the same way that you're A-levels are what you need in order to be allowed to do a degree, and your undergraduate degree is what you need to be allowed to do a postgraduate degree. I thought it was like that, not that actually it's the first step to becoming an expert. And so I probably didn't give enough thought to what my PhD was in and whether I wanted to be an expert in that. And fairly quickly after completing my PhD, I did a KTP project with an external company, and everyone was very impressed by me, but probably more impressed with the things that I did outside of my core research, which was things like seeing, could our new technology be used? Would it be picked up by the NHS? How would it be applied? How much would it cost? And they found this unexpected, and they thought, maybe you should look at a career in a different avenue. So I didn't listen to them. I carried on being a researcher. And the idea of academia being toxic towards women, there's a huge amount of material out there. I'm not going to spend very long on it, but just to say that it is something that I experienced. And one of the things that really motivates me in my professional services career is being on the other side gives you much more opportunity to try and change this culture, to try and make it better for the people that follow me, so that the issues that made it very hard for me to progress are not there for people following behind me. Another key challenge that I found in academia was gatekeeping. If you consider all the people that have to peer review your papers and peer review your grants, there's actually hordes of people who control your career progression. And as it is true that each gate that opens makes the next one easier, that works in reverse. And each one that you don't manage to get through makes the next one more difficult. And I found this in very stark contrast to people I knew who worked in the private sector, where your career progression was controlled by people who knew you, people who saw you working, small groups of people who you worked with all the time. And I found this frustrating and challenging. Resilience is something of a buzzword these days, and there's a lot of focus on individual resilience, but I think that maybe detracts from how much resilience an academic career needs. I often liken it to being an actor, because you need to, you're essentially auditioning, there are critics, you're always trying to win money. And if you'd said to somebody, if I'd told my mum I wanted to be an actor, she would have said, absolutely not, there's no career security in that. But when I told her I wanted to be a scientist and an academic, she's like, yes, darling, that'd be fantastic, definitely do that. But I think there are a lot of parallels. And this phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup, I don't hear much in the workplace, but I heard it a lot when I had a newborn. And I think it is absolutely true. And if you're doing a career that demands a huge amount of resilience from you, then your cup is empty. You can't use that resilience in other areas of your life. And for me personally, at exactly the moment that I should have been building my career and really maxing out the resilience by applying for lots of grants, putting out lots of papers, I was also undergoing fertility treatment, which just takes so much resilience, and you cannot pour from an empty cup. So that was a key pivotal moment in my career. And at that moment, it became too much. And I decided to leave academia, briefly first to a biotech company. And then I did the most shocking thing that I think I've ever done in my life, which was that I resigned a job without having a job to go to. And I was in the very fortunate position that I could afford to not work for a little while. And I took 12 months to reflect on what I wanted from my career. Did I want to go back to work? What did I want? What did I want that to look like? To reflect, to grieve. And I think this is really important. I've been working towards my academic career since I was in school. So it had been over 20 years of my life on this one path. And that life was now not going to happen in that way. And there are feelings of grief surrounding that. And I think it's really important to recognize that you can have grief about something, but it is still the right thing to let it go. And I think that is a really important thing to recognize, and something that I think people can struggle with when you're realizing that academia is maybe not for you, but you're so invested in it that it's quite hard to step away, and you feel that grief and you think that means it was a mistake, and it's not. Those are feelings that you need to sit with and allow yourself space for that. And this quote, I nearly started my talk with this quote. I think it's the most fantastic quote. You are not the work you do. You are the person you are. And I remember my husband asking me this when I stepped away from bench research. He said, will you be okay not telling people that you're a scientist? When they ask you what you do, will you be okay with that? And fundamentally, I still tell people I'm a scientist because I will always be a scientist in terms of how I think of things, how I approach the world. But it's not the job I do anymore. It's still the person I am. And I think we need to be very careful about how invested you become in paid work as your own identity, and realize what is your personal identity and how that is separate from your paid work. So I think that's a really important thing to remember. So on to plan B. Now, a lot of people, when I was doing my PhD in the labs, everyone seemed to have a plan B, and that plan B mostly looked like a bakery or a coffee shop or a bookshop, or that sort of really a sweet little independent business where you feel that you're in charge of everything. For me, my plan B was a wedding dress shop. That's what I want. It's like, that's absolutely it. Now, when I got to my end of my 12 months of healing, I could have done that. I could have taken that opportunity and said, you know what, let's open that wedding dress shop. Let's make that dream real. If I had done that, then my very first wedding season would have been 2020, when it was literally illegal to get married. So I would have put everything into my dream and I would have lost it all. And I just wanted to flag that because I think often it's presented that you can stay in the sort of semi-secure environment of having a salary and sick leave and a pension, or you can pitch out on your own as an entrepreneur, and there's a middle way. There are other jobs that are not research, that still pay you every month, that still have pensions, still have annual leave, and still are rewarding. You don't have to do that entrepreneur thing, run your own business. If you want to, go for it. But I thought it was worth pointing out that I'm very, very glad I did not take that route. So on to plan C. Through existing networks, I heard about a job opportunity, and networks are so, so important. I cannot overstate how important it is to maintain networks. I applied for this job. I did not get that job. I also did not get the next one. These were both professional services roles back at Cardiff University. However, the person that interviewed me for that first job that I didn't get contacted me to tell me that there was a similar role coming up, and they really thought I should apply for it. And I did, with the feedback I'd had from those 2 failed job interviews. And that time I got the job. So keep going, keep those networks. And at this point, I'd like to just give you a few really key things for if you're applying for ALTAC roles. Completely overhaul your CV. An academic CV is not going to get you anywhere. I initially applied for probably over 20 roles and didn't get a sausage. And it wasn't until I actually changed my CV that I suddenly started getting interviews. So emphasize your skills and deliverables. No one wants to read your research papers. What they want to say is, I supervise X number of people. I won this quantity of grant funding. I literally have a bullet point that says, in this role, I published 4 primary research papers and 2 invited reviews. That's it, because no one's interested anymore. What they're interested in is what I did. Google is your friend. If you are moving sectors, there will be words and phrases and keywords that you don't recognize. Google them. You can find out what they mean so that your actual application doesn't fall short because you didn't recognize something. And there's actually a lot of resources out there that can help you get roles, because people put blogs, people put articles. You can educate yourself about a different area quite rapidly. And that leads into preparing for interviews. And the other really key thing is draw on all areas of experience. Maybe you're a school governor, maybe you volunteer, maybe you've taken part in various schemes. I had been lucky enough to be on the GW4 Crucible, and I've also done When Wales mentoring. And these have been incredibly important because it builds skills that you're maybe not getting in your day-to-day research. So that job that I got was an impact officer working towards REF. And I've for the jobs I've done, I've kind of blocked them into the green things, which were fantastic about them, and the red things that were a bit more challenging. The first one to note is it was still a short-term contract. I still have not escaped the short-term contracts that plague academia. And it was very high pressure, although I will say it was the kind of pressure that I personally thrive under. But the real pivotal moment for me was the strategic insight that I got with it, that I understood what is behind the curtain, what is driving the university, what's their strategy, and how do the researchers fit into that. And I was also able to look at a wide range of research and deep dive into that, which personally works for me. Rather than becoming an absolute expert in one area, I like to dip around and look at different things. It was also very task focused. So when you're in research, you just have to do more and be better. It's quite difficult to ever achieve those things because you always do more. You can always be better. Whereas we had a body of work that was finite, that had to be delivered on a specific date. And I also, I thrive in that sort of environment. The team was fantastic. Can't speak highly enough for them. So I really enjoyed that. I moved to another role then, which managing an all Wales research network. I loved that, the whole Wales scope. I had a huge amount of autonomy. I had interaction with Welsh government. So again, broadening those networks, which is so important. Let's take a moment here to say I had the most outstanding line manager. I've benefited from fantastic managers my whole career, but that line manager was really just above and beyond and was incredibly supportive. It was a little bit of a struggle for a few points there. I was quite isolated in the university and had quite vague KPIs. But overall, it was also a role I very much enjoyed. During that role, an opportunity to have a secondment at the Wellcome Trust came up. And this was the kind of job I had applied for previously and not had any look in. And I thought, you know what, let's just see. Let's see if I can, if I'm now interesting to these people. And I was. So I went up to the Wellcome Trust for 4 months, which obviously it's the Wellcome Trust. I've spent most of my year at Cardiff University, so this was vital career building. It had a global outlook. Again, that strategic overview is fantastic. The main challenge for me in not staying in that role, because a long-term role became available, was the salary was about similar to what I could command at Cardiff University, with a minimum of £100 a week going up to thousands if I had to go be in the office full time. So I just couldn't cover that, but it was a fantastic role. And as a result of that, I was then able to get my current role as institutional translation manager, where I'm managing a pot of money. And this is the thing, when you're looking in a more strategic way at your career, this job was important for me because I had previously not managed large pots of money. So now I can tick that off on my my CV. I finally made it out of the pay grade I'd been in since I got my PhD. So that was a personal plus for me. I used it as an opportunity to gain my Prince 2 qualification. So that's a project management qualification. One of the transferable skills that I kept being told when I did my PhD is, you've done a PhD, you can project manage. And then I would go for jobs that required project management skills and they wouldn't be interested because I didn't know that there were project management qualifications. And that was what they meant in the job advert when they said project management skills. They meant, do you have that qualification or a similar Agile or Scrum? There are lots of different ones. It's again short term and it has been sunsetted. So I was on the job hunt again and been very lucky to gain another role at the university, a very prestigious role managing the Digital Transformation University Innovation Institute. And at this point, I've got to say the imposter syndrome has very much kicked in. However, I have a very supportive team around me who keep telling me that actually you are the right person for this role and you'll be great at it. But it's probably the first time I've really properly hit that in my career. And it's, you know, it's interesting, but I'm very excited. I'm excited to expand beyond life sciences, where all my roles to date have been very focused on that. And I would bring you then to just the final thing, which is I've moved through all of those roles by always being on the lookout. Keep an eye out for opportunities, put your hat in the ring. It's always worth applying, and you never know where that might take you. So thank you very much.
Dear Harriet, thank you so much for a brilliant presentation. And thanks for acknowledging the challenges that women face while developing their careers in academia. I think it is very important to raise our voice on this, as well as, opening our minds to other opportunities that are available out there for us. This middle way that you have, talked about, it could be a game changer. So thank you so much for your intervention. Now I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Maria Oliver. Dr. Maria Oliver is Principal Scientist at InBio, and we are pleased that she has joined us today to share about her journey as a woman researcher moving into the private sector.
Okay, thank you very much, Barbara, and thanks, Harriet. That was such an insightful talk. You raised some really, really interesting points there. I found myself nodding and agreeing throughout the whole thing. So my talk is going to be slightly different from Harriet's. This is really just my scientific journey from academia to industry. If you go on to the next slide, please, Barbara. Unlike Harriet, I didn't actually always have that drive to have a PhD, to be a doctor. I did have the drive that I knew I wanted to go to university, but beyond that, I didn't really know any kind of career paths or future past university. So I kind of did the classic route that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, did my GCSEs at 15 and 16. As I said, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I picked my A-levels that I thought I was good at and found interesting. And then came the choice for picking my degree. I knew I wanted to go to university, but I didn't really know what I wanted to study. I liked biology and I liked sport. And so I thought, oh, I wonder if I could be a physiotherapist. But when I spoke to my careers advisors, I was told, oh, I wouldn't do that if I was you. That's very, very specific. You'll be stuck in that career forever. Do something generic, and then the world's your oyster. You can do whatever you want. So not knowing any better, I decided to apply for a biology degree. So got a position at Cardiff University and enrolled to BSc. During my course, I had the opportunity to specialise. Such as turning my degree into something slightly more specific, such as a genetics degree or a biotechnology degree. But once again, I was told that if you're not really sure what you want to do, just keep it broad, keep it generic. So I stuck with basic biology. I also had the opportunity to do a professional training year, but this was on me. I held my hands up. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to get my degree, 3 years done, get in the workplace, start earning some money. I was done with education. So I worked hard, graduated with first class honours. Thought, right, off I go, bring on the lab roles. But that wasn't quite as easy as I thought it was going to be. When I started applying for jobs, I was told, well, where's your experience? You don't have any lab experience. As I said, that was, in hindsight, I should have done a professional training year. I would have had a year's lab experience. And now, looking back, I would advise anybody thinking whether to do that. Definitely get some experience. However, when I started applying for specialist roles, such as a genetics lab, I was told, well, you don't have a genetics degree. We're obviously going to apply someone that has. So I was a bit stuck. Next slide, please, Barbara. So I joined some various temping agencies, see if they can help me. And luckily, one of them managed to find me a temporary job in Amersham Biosciences, who are now GE Healthcare. And I was employed as a dispensing technician. Just in case you don't really know what a dispensing technician is, it is literally putting liquid from one big container into multiple tiny containers. Not exactly the glamorous, exciting science job I had envisaged. Luckily, the team leader there managed to move me up through the team quite quickly, and I became a QC technician, testing reagents for Western blot kits. Again, not exactly glamorous, but at least I was doing some actual science. I then got finally a permanent job with CFAS, who are actually a subsidiary of DEFRA. There I was an eco-toxicologist, testing water for toxins, testing various different animals as key species for pollutants. That role I really enjoyed. I really felt like I was actually doing good science, but not that many months into that position, the lab was due to close and they were relocating to Lowestoft in Suffolk, which I'm sure is a lovely place, but I had no friends, no family or anything that side of the country at all. I decided that I really didn't want to go to the other side of England. So back to the drawing board, applied for different jobs, and I was very lucky to actually get a position as a research assistant at Oxford University, where we were investigating rare immunodeficiencies. Like Angharad said, that I have been very lucky in having a lot of good line managers in my career. And my supervisor here at Oxford University was an amazing man, very inspirational. He really took me under his wing, bought me textbooks, there was nothing he wouldn't do for me. Really got me my interest in immunology sparked. And he took his time and taught me valuable skills and techniques, one of which he really invested in me in learning how to do flow cytometry. And very quickly within the lab, I became the go-to person for all things flow cytometry based. And I quickly found myself helping PhD students, helping even postdocs to set up and run their experiments. And I started to think, you know what, maybe I could do this. I can clearly, hold my own in this lab and in this environment. And my supervisor had been pushing me for a long time to say, you should do this, you could do this. And he decided that he was going to go back to Spain. So my position with him was coming to an end. And I thought, well, things are looking like maybe this is the option for me. So next slide, please, Barbara. So back to Cardiff, I came this time to embark on my PhD. This was within the Department of Infection Immunity. Having had like 2 or 3 years out of university, I was a little older than most of the other PhD students I had enrolled with at the time, which was slightly concerning to me. But with my experience, it meant that this was really what I wanted to do, and I hit the ground running. 4 years later, I successfully defended my thesis and got my doctorate. Here's a lovely picture of me on a lovely summer's day wearing my paraphernalia. But then, next question: what are you going to do? Where are you going to go next? Constantly coming from all corners of my life, and I again hadn't actually thought. I don't really know. Wasn't even planning on doing a PhD, so now I don't know what to do. I started being told you need to do a postdoc overseas. That's the way forward. That way, you will be viewed as being independent, and you look more favourably from the grant bodies. Start applying for your own research. Think about what your research stream is going to be. You need to publish, get those papers. Otherwise, you won't get any grant funding. But all of this, I was like, well, really? I have to up sticks, leave my family and friends behind just so I can succeed in potentially getting another postdoc? I don't know. However, fate would have it that my PhD supervisor had just won 5 years worth of funding, and he offered me a postdoc position in the lab I was currently in. That meant not having to up sticks and leave, and it also meant that potentially I could delay that career decision for a little bit longer. So that's what I did. Next slide, please, Barbara. Okay, so during these postdoc years then, I bought a house, started questioning the lack of stability that these short-term postdoc positions brought with them. I wasn't really a fan of this uncertainty of moving from one postdoc to the next, 2 years here, potentially 3 years there, hoping that your PIs would be successful in their next grant rounds. What would happen? How would I pay my mortgage if the grants weren't successful and I was out of a job for a long time? These things started to kind of weigh in on the back of my mind, and I wasn't really happy with that. But I'd say the biggest change in mindset for me was having my first child. And this is my eldest boy, Joshua, here, a few weeks old there. He's now nearly 8. It is a bit of a cliche, I know, to say that your priorities change when you have a baby, but it's a cliche because for most people it's true, and it was certainly true for me. As a new mum, I just began to think, is this right for me? I'm not sure. And when I came back from maternity leave, I very quickly realised that being a postdoc and all the stresses that involved was actually no longer for me. I didn't have the drive to run my own lab. I didn't want to be a PI. I was still expected to come in at 10 p.m. at night to put cells in incubators. I was expected to come in on weekends and weigh mice. I was expected to make presentations and write papers in my free time. Well, when you have a baby, free time does not exist. I had no desire to do these anymore, and very quickly I started looking outside of academia. Next slide, please, Barbara. So I decided to make the switch to the biotech industry. For me, it was actually one of those right time, right place kind of things. I knew the boss at the time of our company from my PhD days, and there was a position coming up as senior scientist within the company. So after a chat with him, I realized that's what I wanted to do, which was great. It meant that I didn't have to apply for jobs. I didn't have to do interviews, especially with a new baby. I had a bit of baby brain. I wasn't sure how I was going to prepare for that. So, you know, again, luck does come into these things sometimes, and kind of, as I say, landed on my feet with this position. So I would imagine that someone who has had a career in a much bigger biotech company, for example, such as AstraZeneca or Author Clinical Diagnostics just down the road, it will have very different experiences. For me, from what I'm about to share with you from working in Bio in the last 6.5 years. But as I said, this is unique to me, and I hope that the rest of my experiences can provide insight into what life might be like for you. So when I told people within the university that I was leaving, I kind of was met with surprise, opposition, and was told that you're selling yourself short. Why would you want to do that? I was made to feel like I was betraying everything and everyone that I you know, grown to get used to over the last, you know, PhD and postdoc years. So there was not real much support and encouragement, but as I said, I knew it wasn't right for me, and I'd made up my mind. So off I went anyway. I started out as senior scientist. At the time, we were a very, very small, almost you'd say startup company. Although in Bio as a company has been around for a very long time. We have a sister company in the US. They're a much bigger outfit than we are. There's 20, 25 people there. Their lab had been going for 20 odd years by the time I started. So there was a lot of support and advice available to us should we need it. But there was just 2 full-time lab staff and a PTY student and 3 office staff at the time. We were based in the Medi Centre on the Heath Hospital site. So I guess, yeah, we were considered, you know, a startup at the time. But within 6 months, we moved to the facility in Pentwyn, where we are now. You can behind me. And we've grown over the years quite substantially from where we started out. We have actually 5 full-time lab team members now. And within that time, I've been promoted to principal scientist. And I directly see 2 junior staff members who directly report to me. And then we have other people working in the lab as well. From my slide, I decided to put up some bullet points of kind of the main responsibilities and roles that I have as principal scientist here. Hopefully you'll be able to see that there are some similarities in between you know, kind of a research postdoc role within academia, but some differences too. So I guess one of the things that's very similar is the fact that I oversee internal research and development that goes on within the company. And obviously the research aspect is very much the same as research that goes on in academia. We conduct research and development, we still write papers for peer review, we go to conferences to present our findings, just like we would as an academic. I guess one of the other similar things is obviously I train new staff, I supervise new staff, and that's something that a postdoc would do when new PhD students or new junior members would come into your lab. But there are some big differences. I'd say one of the main things is obviously the business side of my job. So a lot of my time is spent doing what we call here contract research. And this is basically where customers or other businesses come to us with a question or a problem or something that they want testing. And basically we come up with their proposal for how we'll solve it. It's generally always unique to that specific customer. It often involves designing new techniques or new testing methods and a lot of, I'd say, scientific thinking outside the box. This is one of the aspects of a job I absolutely love. It's always new, it's always challenging, and very bespoke. So it's never kind of like a dull day, as it were. on the job. I guess other business related things, which is different than being academia, as I said, we go to conferences, but not just as presenters or delegates, but we go as exhibitors. This is obviously going with the aim of promoting the company, helping with marketing side of things, and seeing conferences from both sides is really, really interesting, and certainly something that you wouldn't ever get to do as an academic. Also, there's definitely a sense of togetherness and camaraderie within our business. Rather than having individual personal goals, which can lead to, I'd say, selfishness and often isolation in academia, there's a sense of everyone belonging to the InBio family, and it sounds a bit cheesy, but consequently, we all have the same goal. We all want to make the company do well. We want to present the best we can of ourselves for the company. And therefore, everyone's there to help each other. There's no kind of like backstabbing and, well, I'm going to get this grant over you, and secrecy and things that I experienced in academia. I'm not saying that happens in every lab, but it's certainly something that I've been aware of. So I think that camaraderie and the same goal that everybody's working towards definitely makes working in this company very friendly and welcoming, and somewhere where I definitely enjoy being. Okay, next slide, please, Barbara. Okay, so if you're thinking about a career outside of academia, I'd say, as Angharad touched on actually, think about the transferable skills you have and what you might be able to bring to a company. There are a lot. You are a skilled scientist, remember that. There's so many techniques and things that you obviously have had to use during your PhDs and postdocs, and obviously that almost goes without saying. There's plenty of obvious ones, such as accuracy, attention to detail, scientific communication, working independently, etc. Slightly maybe less obvious ones, I'd say, I'm pretty sure if you're anything like me, PhD is not plain sailing. You will always come up against issues and problems. So you will have had a lot of experience in troubleshooting, whether that's troubleshooting experiment, troubleshooting an assay, thinking on your feet because your mice have turned up or your reagents are wrong. And there's a lot of thinking on your feet, and I'd say that's a skill that I use almost every day, and I'd say is very, very valuable. Work ethic also is valuable skill. I know PhDs can be very difficult at times, but you're doing it, you got there. And I'd say that hard work pays off in business just as it does in academia. Don't forget, you've also mastered scientific thinking, and this will come invaluable, I would say, again, what Angharad touched on, if you're changing disciplines. So for me, I did my PhD in viral immunology. InBio specializes in allergy. I knew virtually nothing about allergy other than a little bit of, one kind of module back in my undergrad days. But because your brain is used to reading papers, taking in that knowledge, absorbing it and remembering it, and this great scientific training that you've had for years, you can very quickly adapt, and changing disciplines really isn't anything to be scared of. If you want to change your direction away from your PhD, I would say go for it. That certainly hasn't held me back in any way. And in fact, you spend 3 or 4 years so absorbed in one tiny thing that you become expert in, that actually changing discipline really kind of reinvigorated my desire to learn and start becoming knowledgeable about a different area. So that's what you have got. What perhaps you might be missing, or some things that are maybe not obvious to you, I'd say teamwork. And I know it's, as an employer, when I get CVs from people, essential skills, I can work independently and I can work as a team, and that's it. I hate that as an employer. Can you give me some examples? Okay, this is absolutely crucial, because as I touched on in my previous slides, we're all there to help each other. Acting selflessly is very important. Putting yourself first, even if it's just something as simple as answering the phone in the office when everyone else is busy. Okay, that might not be your main job, but pick up that phone. Everyone else is brushed off their feet. Do it. Be a team member. You need to show that you're capable of this. You don't ever think that's below me either. If the bin's full, change the bin. If the cups are dirty, put them in the dishwasher. It's just look after each other. And I think as an employee, I really like to see in CVs and covering letters. Covering letters is another really important thing. Just demonstrate how you are actually a team player. Don't just say you are. Obviously, business knowledge you may be lacking. Market awareness you may be lacking in. That doesn't really matter. Again, to me as a prospective employer, as long as you can demonstrate you're keen to learn these aspects, I think that's fine. Again, from my point of view, these were things that I didn't know a lot about, and I find fascinating. Okay, science is my fundamental core job, but because you're in the business, you get to learn all these other kind of different things, and it's great, and it keeps me on my toes as well. So I would make sure you try and demonstrate that you are keen to help and keen to learn these kind of things. And communication, but with non-scientists, you will have been so heavily involved in your academia bubble for 3 or 4 years or more, and you're all talking to each other, on that science level. In business, that's not always what you get. Yes, you do have direct contact with scientists, but you also have contact with people who are perhaps in the marketing world, or in the completely different departments, but they've been assigned to solve this problem, or how are we going to sell our product. And so you need to be able to communicate with non-scientists. Have you, for example, given a presentation at school to children, where obviously you have to tone your scientific language down a lot? Have you given a presentation to a wider community? Just if you can think of an example, give these as well. And one thing I would just touch on: scientific grant writing in academia is very, very different than commercial grant writing, but I won't go into that. Don't think you're gonna ace that, even with experience with grant writing in academia. Next slide, please, Barbara. Okay, final slide for me. I just want to kind of sum up the positives that I personally feel that I've had from working in industry. I have my second child, here's Charlie, he's now coming up 5, while I was in bio. And I can honestly say that the experience was much nicer, much more relaxed and supportive coming back from maternity leave than when I was at academia. As Angharad said, I've experienced the two, the toxic environment that you can get in academia, where the gender bias still is very, very strong. For me personally, I experienced it in a number of different environments. Where I am now, it's very different. Our president and owner is a male, but everybody under him in the next kind of top roles are women. So his vice president is an amazing lady from Germany. His head of research, basic research, is a very, very talented scientist from Spain. His head of immunoassays is an American lady. And then here in the UK, the lady that oversees us is Hayley. She has a PhD from Cardiff University as well. And then myself and my colleague Anna, we both run the lab. So we're surrounded by amazing women scientists who are all there to support each other. Most of us have children, which again is, that kind of level of understanding and that expectation for you to potentially put family first sometimes over your academic career. It is very important, and something that's definitely not to be sniffed at. We have an excellent work-life balance here, and we all work very, very hard. And consequently, we're rewarded with the flexibility. So if our children have a school play or a sports day, we can take the time off and do that, and there's no issues. So that's real positive for me. We also still get the opportunity to travel. We go to international conferences and meetings. As principal scientist, I'm generally the one that presents the work from the UK here. This last year alone, I went to Phoenix in Arizona, to present some work at a conference. Also been to Prague, and that bottom picture there, although it looks like the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, it's actually in Lisbon. So we still get to travel, still get to go to conferences. That's great. And then I guess finally, I'd like to say that I love the fact that I still very much consider myself a scientist. As Angharad said, my job still involves a lot of scientific discovery and exploration, which results in publications, but also helps the business grow. And we consider ourselves experts in our field. And I'd say that's mostly down to the staff and our kind of positive thinking. So yeah, I think, next slide, Barbara, I think that's everything from me. So thanks for listening, and I'll be happy to join any Q&A sessions after the talks.
Thank you so much, Maria. I'm really pleased you came with us and share your passion, about being a researcher outside academia. I think it's fascinating to hear about your self-reflection and how this can inform your decisions, and it is rewarding, to find other opportunities and to know the transfer of skills that you can have when moving, to other sectors. I'm going to be presenting our next speaker. We have Dr. Adrian Walters, who is materials engineer specialist at Swansea University, and he is also program director of Sunrise, which is the strategic university network to revolutionize Indian solar energy. I'm sure he will talk more about his role, and his presentation is titled Technology Transfer, Translating Ideas into Products. Thank you so much, Edwin. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Barbara, and thank you, previous speakers, Angharad and Maria. That I'm now terrified about giving my talk because yours were so good. But yeah, I'm going to talk about tech transfer today and sort of my journey in the tech transfer field, which, like Kathy said earlier, these career paths aren't necessarily linear or easy, but my journey has definitely been interesting for me, enjoyable and rewarding. So what is tech transfer? Tech transfer is when we transfer technology or knowledge or ideas from one person or organization to another. And usually we do that because the organization holding the knowledge or technology needs another organization to take it forward to deliver some sort of impact, some sort of economic impact, some sort of societal impact. So yeah, when we talk about technology transfer, we use technology in the broadest sense to include sort of knowledge and ideas and any sort of embodiment of understanding or advancement of concepts. Technology transfer is a really collaborative process. It has to be. It has to involve numerous stakeholders in order to transfer those ideas from one place to another. So that's the first sort of really interesting, exciting bit for me, is you've got to engage with lots of different parties at lots of different levels within lots of different organizations. And you can't really talk about technology transfer without touching on at least a little bit on intellectual property, which is the formal embodiment of these technologies or ideas in a tangible or intangible form. So these could be patents, copyrights, know-how, or any other sort of intellectual property body. My own journey, I started, so as Angharad said earlier, she introduced herself as a scientist. So yeah, I introduced myself as a materials scientist or engineer. I'm a non-practicing materials scientist. I haven't practiced materials engineering now for around 20 years. But I went to Swansea in 1991 as an undergraduate. I stayed on and did a Master's of Philosophy in Materials Science, PhD. I was an RA there as well. And during those times, I worked with companies like Rolls-Royce, LG Semicon, and De Beers Industrial Diamond Division, looking at either various properties of materials or devices to measure properties of materials. And that's where I sort of kind of got informally involved in technology transfer. So I was developing new knowledge and transferring that to other organizations. And at the time, back in the 90s, then technology transfer wasn't really a term you heard much of. At least I didn't. And in Swansea University, you didn't have a technology transfer office or a technology transfer officer. that you could approach to support you in transferring ideas into other organisations. And then again, like Anne Harrod, I did a KTP project following my term as an RA with LG Semicon. And that was really quite a turning point for me, because I was embedded in a company for 2 years, using my domain expertise in material science to develop new products and processes for the company. And it was during that time that I became skilled in the art of writing commercially focused grant applications, like Maria touched on earlier. And this became a really key skill set of mine. And I captured around £2 million of external funding for the SME that I was working with at the time, and it generally was an SME. It was like a maximum of 10 people at any one time, and possibly only 7 of those were full-time employees, and that included finance, admin, design engineers and the like. So that sort of amount of money is transformational for that sort of size of business. It was their turnover would have been around 1 million a year at the time. Following that, we made a family decision, my wife and I, that we wanted to return to Swansea, because her family were based in Swansea, and we wanted to start our own family. So I got a job as a process engineer at a company that recycled silicon test wafers. Again, I used my domain expertise and material scientist, my expertise as a commercial grant writer, and my expertise as acting as this interface between industry and the university. So on my return to Swansea, I got in contact with my old contacts at Swansea University and said, right, I'm going to be working here. There's going to be opportunities and problems I'm going to need to solve, which you can help with in terms of your expertise and facilities that you've got. And one of the first problems I came across in my new role was there were these silicon wafers that had coatings on them, which we didn't have a process for in the company to remove. So we couldn't recycle these wafers. So we were creating a stockpile of these, what the CEO described as difficult to strip wafers, which basically meant they were impossible for the company to strip at that time. And then using the expertise that I developed in my previous role at SVS, I developed a new plasma strip process for the company using the facilities and expertise at Swansea University. So again, there was an element of knowledge and technology transfer between academia and industry. After that, because I continued with my commercial grant writing skills, honed those, got even more successful, captured money for Pure Wafer to continue their R&D efforts. A role came up back at the university in the research office to support the Faculty of Engineering at the time, capture external funding. So I applied for that. I was successful. My domain expertise as a material engineer, my grant writing skills, and my ability to communicate with both the academic community and industry were the key elements that led me to capture that post back at the research office. And then while I was in that role, helping academics capture research funding and innovation funding, we now had a technology transfer office at Swansea University. And I got to know them and then me, and they realised, well, yeah, Adrian's got this really good skill set which would lend itself to technology transfer generally. So we collaborated together, and I shared my skills with them, and they shared their knowledge with me. And I grew my understanding of intellectual property, marketing, startup business skills, how to raise investment, and that sort of thing. And then I helped capture a major project at Swansea University called Specific Innovation and Knowledge Centre, and it was a material science project in the field of solar energy. It was directly relevant to all my training back from MPhil days. And the PI of that said, Adrian, I'd like you to come and be my project manager for this project. I think you'd be excellent with engaging with our industrial stakeholders, the project management skills, your ability to raise finance, that sort of thing. So I went on secondment to Specific back in 2013. And I brought all the IP and commercialization training to that project, although it wasn't officially part of my role. And we had an aligned Centre for Doctoral Training to that project. And I started, I made it known that IP and commercialization was an area I was interested in. So the project said, yeah, okay, you can look after IP and commercialization for us. And then I started to get a bit of a stream of doctoral students visiting me saying, oh, I've discovered this. I think it's commercially relevant. I've been working with X company on this. They co-sponsor my project. What should we do? And I said, well, we should, there's a standard process for technology transfer. And yeah, the first stage is you disclose that technology to me. We capture it in a standard format. And then we do some evaluation and analysis on it. See if we can find out what the market for this might be. And then, we talk to our technology transfer office and see if we should patent it, see if we should keep it secret, try and establish what the best route for commercialization would be, whether that's a spin out or a license. And we went from there. And the first innovation that came across my desk was a corrosion inhibitor for coating metal products. And the key element here was it was cheap, it was safe in terms of environmental acceptability, and it was an exact sort of substitute for an existing material that was known to be toxic, and the industry had been looking for a solution for over 20 years. So we captured the idea. The technology transfer office said, yeah, this looks important and commercially viable. Let's file a patent. So we filed a patent, and then we started to build up a business case around the patent to convince external funders and private investors about why this is a good idea and why they should support a spin-out company in this area. And shockingly, we our first attempt, every funding application we submitted to either public sources like Innovate UK or the Royal Society, or private investors like Development Bank of Wales and the Armours and Brazers Venture Prize. Every application we submitted was successful. So to our surprise, we started a spin-out company, and the doctoral student that I supported through that, he also captured a Royal Academy Engineering Enterprise Fellowship along the way, which trained him up in all the business skills he needed to run his own company. And now he's a CEO of a business worth in the region of £10 million. So for me, that's why I like technology transfer. I find it really rewarding helping researchers capture their ideas, translating them into a commercially viable story, and taking that forward to a commercial product that will deliver impact and economic growth to the region. Why do researchers make good technology transfer officers? I think is mainly because you have domain expertise. So for me, I focus on material science and sustainable energy technologies and that sort of thing, because that's my area of expertise. And that's what makes me good at translating a researcher's idea into a commercial proposition. Researchers, they're innate problem solvers. So it doesn't really matter whether it's a scientific or technical problem or whether it's a business problem. They can analyze the problem and they can develop a solution to that problem. We like solving problems, basically. And we also, I feel like researchers, we tend to like learning new things and skills, developing new skills. And as a technology transfer officer, you need to do that all the time. There's always something new to learn and new skills to develop. And researchers are also good communicators of quite complex concepts, which is really important. As a technology transfer officer, you've got to take what could be a relatively complex scientific idea and translate it into something that an investor who doesn't have domain expertise can understand in a way that they can see, well, yeah, if I put money into this, I'm going to get a return on that investment. And also researchers, we tend to have perseverance. If anybody who's done a PhD, it requires a degree of tenacity, to say the least. Particularly as you get towards the end and you're writing up, you need to have a good degree of perseverance. So yeah, the benefits of working in a technology transfer role, and I'll say a little bit more about whether that's a formal role or an informal role later. You get to learn all about intellectual property and the management of it. That's really important skills for the universities generally and businesses. So that's one reason. You get to learn about the various routes to deliver an impact from research. My favourite is spin-outs. Those are the most exciting. Cutting license deals is not quite as exciting as starting a new venture. And you can, if you spin-outs and startups, you can, it's tangible. You can see the investment. You can see when you move into the first building or offices. You can see when you're making your first appointments of employees. You can see that business growing. It's just hugely rewarding. You learn all about market analysis, marketing, and raising investment. Stakeholder engagement is another really important aspect of technology transfer. You'll have to engage with a wide range of people, from investors, non-executive directors, funding bodies, patent offices, patent attorneys, and of course, entrepreneurs and innovators. So at the very core of technology transfer, we go back to the beginning where we're translating ideas into impact, and that can really change lives. So in my current role, I'm the director of a £6.5 million Indo-UK project, where we are developing new solar energy technologies and demonstrating those technologies for the benefit of rural communities across the global south. And as part of that, we've had to engage with a rural community in India. It's a village of around 80 households. Average household income is around £150 a year. And we've recently completed a solar energy demonstrator building in the village. It's now owned and controlled by the community. We've created a social enterprise, a village energy community cooperative. They operate the building. They've been trained to do that. And that building is now not only generating energy for the community, it's generating income for the community. So if the GDP of the village is around £9,000, they recently had an order from an NGO to create for 1,000 lanterns for the Diwali festival, and these lanterns are retailing at around £6 to £7 each. So that's a significant uplift to the village GDP immediately. Also, they've equipped that building with a rice thresher and a flour mill. So that saves the villagers a day-long round trip to the nearest processing facility by foot or ox cart to process their crops. So not only are they processing their crops at a reduced rate, so 3 rupees instead of 4 rupees per kilo, they're not wasting time traveling to and from the processing facility. So they're freeing up their time for more economic activity or other beneficial uses of their time. So, and that is none of that is available without some element of technology transfer. So we've worked with the village, but we've also worked with Tata Cleantech Capital, a big green finance house in India, to make that happen. This is a first of a kind demonstrator, but we're looking to roll that demonstrator out to other villages to build our commercial case, if you like, to do this more widely. It's far cheaper to do what we've done than to put a grid connection into that village. And also the grid connections to rural India are very unstable. So typically 12 hours a day, they wouldn't have power anyway, even if they had a grid connection. So it's these sort of things that I find particularly rewarding, is seeing the impact on communities or regions as a result of the technology transfer activities that have been undertaken. Personally, in addition to seeing those businesses grow and seeing the impact on those communities or regions, it's been professionally rewarding for me. I've held director roles in several companies now. I've had my own technology transfer project awarded by the Royal Society. So I was a Royal Society entrepreneur in residence at Swansea University between 2018 to 2022. Again, the main focus of that project was helping early career researchers to translate their ideas into products and services. And I've won several awards. I've won a Times Higher Education Award for my Sunrise project, and Praxis Oral Award for collaboration. And I just recently, in the last 2 weeks, I've been made an innovation mentor at the Indian Institute of Technology in Kanpur. And to sum it all off, the Faculty of Science and Engineering at Swansea University have asked me to do some teaching. So whereas I wasn't an academic, and I'm still not an academic because I don't hold an academic role, I am actually doing some academic work. So there's an ability to combine both non-academic roles with academic activity. And I'm also publishing again. So instead of publishing in a material science domain, or in a technical way, I've been publishing in a material science domain, but from a tech transfer way, in terms of analysing new technologies and what the barriers are to commercialization for those technologies. So what I would say is technology transfer is really exciting. It's really rewarding. It's quite challenging at times. I haven't come across a technology transfer project yet where there hasn't been conflict between one or two or more parties, particularly around the ownership of intellectual property and the benefits derived from that. But it is generally probably the most rewarding aspects of my career, is to create new ventures and see them grow. So anybody who thinks that's interesting, please feel free to contact me. If you want to know more about technology transfer, I'd be happy to have a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. That was fascinating. Obviously, for me, as my background has been in, psychology and social science, that technology transfer role is very new. And I think from your talk, it is important to know that academic work and research needs to adapt. And if we really want to bring technology developments into solutions for the world, we really need to bring this knowledge. And we are very pleased that you were here to share this with us. Thank you so much. And then we're going to move on. We are really pleased to have one of our fellows. Dr. Robert Deves is Senior Principal Engineer at Dyson, and he is also visiting professor of robotic system architectures at the Imperial College. Thank you so much for being here today, Rob. And I'm gonna share the presentation for you, and we look forward to your talk.
So thanks for that introduction, and also to the presenters. It's great to hear about their journeys, from academia and into industry. My story is slightly different in that I'm a researcher that didn't actually do the research at a university. I did my research at a company and gained my master's and PhD while I was working anyway. So my story is slightly different. So the first three speakers were coming out of industry, and I'm an engineer trying to get into industry. And that's what I'm going to discuss in this presentation. So as mentioned, I'm a robotic system architect at Dyson, and I think I've got the best job in the world because I get to do lots of different things. So this week, I was at one part of the week I was discussing some research that we've got going on at Imperial College, some of the work that the PhD students are doing to support that funded research, which was fantastic. I was then another part of the week I was doing some whiteboarding on some future robots for Dyson, looking at some different concepts. This morning I was reviewing some schematics for electronics that are in one of our products. And also this morning I was looking at some manufacturing issues that we've got that we need to cover. So I cover quite a broad area of work in my role, which I really enjoy. And what I'm going to discuss today, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my career, and then I'm going to go on to look at how an engineering career or a scientific career can actually have links into academia also, and then I've just got some tips that I can give you and maybe some advice. So we'll move on to the next slide. Slide, please. So who am I? Well, Rob Deves. I'm a kind of a veteran engineer. I've been an engineer now for over 35 years, and I've worked in three primary industries. I worked when I finished. Well, even during my degree at Cardiff University, I spent a year in BA Systems, and then I came back into BA Systems after graduating. So I was in the aerospace industry for 13 years. I then moved into the microelectronic industry. I was going to become a millionaire. We were, it was the dot-com boom. What could go wrong? So I moved into microelectronics and went to a startup company as well. Where we were a competitor to a company called Arm Holdings, which is, their performance went this way, and the performance of the company I was in kind of nosedived. So I ended up back at ST Microelectronics, making devices for them. And then about 10 years ago, I moved to Dyson to work, working in kind of a consumer industry. But I've had an opportunity to work, in industry on some fantastic projects. When I was at BA Systems, I was involved with a satellite, Orion 1, and involved with making the satellite dishes for that satellite. And in fact, that manufacturing was done in Bridgend, in a small company in Bridgend, which was a spin-out company from BA Systems. So it's great to think that some of the stuff you've worked on has actually made it into space. That's really cool. I also did some other stuff when I was doing my PhD at BA Systems. I got the opportunity to go to Sydney University because I was quite interested in flying kind of drones. So I went to Sydney to look at some kind of navigation algorithms with them. Which was again fantastic, and in fact that technology is now being used in Australia. So you can use the drone to go out over kind of large farms, and then you can assess the farms for does this bit of the farm need some more feed or some more water, or is this ready to be cultivated and things like that. So again, it's quite nice to think of that technology helping to feed people. And then when I was, some of the products I did at ST Microelectronics were to do with set-top boxes. These are the digital TVs that we all watch now, and this was the early days of digital TV, and so I was architecting system on chip devices, one of these chips basically to go into the boxes that go underneath your TV. And again, it's great to think that one of the chips I architected sold over 12 million parts. So it's again quite nice to think that you've had quite a lot of influence on people's lives. And then at Dyson, I was the product technical lead for our current robot, which is on the market, which is called the 360 Hurist. And again, this is a fantastic technology. It saves people time because you don't have to do the vacuuming. The robot will vacuum your floors for you while you're out, and it's packed to the rafters with high technology, and advanced algorithms, which is great. So that's just a bit about my career and some of the projects I've worked on. And during my career, I've had lots of opportunities to travel. I've mentioned I went to Sydney University, so spent time in Sydney, which was great. Also spent time at different universities. I spent in the US. I spent time at MIT, and travelled extensively through Europe as well as part of my role. I've had lots of opportunities as well to work with different institutions. I've mentioned Cardiff University, where I did my first degree, and then although I was working when I did my master's and PhD, the degrees were awarded by the University of Bristol. And I've also had lots of opportunities to work with different institutions, the Institute of Engineering Technologies and the Royal Academy, which I've really enjoyed as well. So that's just a little bit about who I am. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So what I thought I would do on this slide, sorry, it's a little bit busy, but I thought I would show you over the last 10 or so years of my career, how I've been able to get some hooks into industry, into academia, and try and close that gap between industry and academia. So I'll start off with the kind of teaching contributions, starting at the top of the slide. So when I joined Dyson, I did some work with Bath University in supporting some of their mechatronic courses, which was great. And in fact, I still do that now. I helped with one of their projects in November of last year, which was great. So I started that, and then I've been doing that and helping a few of the universities as well, and then in about 2017 the Royal Academy of Engineering gave me a visiting professorship award, which I hold with Imperial College in London. So again, I was able to support some of the courses at Imperial College. It quickly went from I started with the Department of Computing, but then it went to the Dyson Design Engineering School, and also to the Electrical and Electronic Engineering department as well, so supporting them in that area. I also tried with the Institute of Engineering Technology. They have a scheme where they do academic accreditation of universities. So they send a panel of assessors into the university to just make sure that the degrees that the university is providing for engineering are of a certain standard and comply with allowing those who have graduated from those courses to become chartered later on in their career. And the other part of my teaching is with Dyson. Dyson has the Dyson Institute of Engineering and Technology, DIET. So this is a university within the company. It's based in the campus in Malmesbury, and we have lecturers that come in, lecturers that are employed by Dyson, and they're based at our site. And they teach the students. They also take a small percent, 20% of their time actually as working as engineers within the company as well, which is fantastic. So again, I really enjoy that part of my work. On the research side, so moving down to the next part of the slide, I also get involved with EPSRCs, so I chair some of their advisory boards. So I've done 2 projects over the last few years. One was called Pamela, which was a £5 million 5-year project, which was run by Manchester University, but had contributions from Imperial College and Edinburgh University as well. And that was a great project. And has resulted in a startup company, a spin out called Slamcore, which is a company which makes navigation algorithms, and that's a great company, and I'm sure that will be successful in time. I also did another EPSR project called Brains on Board. Again, this was a £5 million 5-year project. And again, I was chair of the advisory board for that. This was a fascinating project, and was on the kind of periphery of my interest area when I first started. It was basically looking at how bees do navigation, but not mimicking, you know, their how they were doing it, but looking at the processing that took place in the bee from its eyes, you know, through the brain, and then replicating that in kind of in silicon to fly a drone. So that was the purpose of the project. And it was fascinating, and I wasn't going to get involved in the project until, because I was into another form of artificial intelligence at the time called deep neural networks. But the guy who was the PI came up to me and said, "Look, you will be interested in this project," because I was drinking a can of Coke, Diet Coke, like a lot of engineers, and the PI said, "Look, if you were using these deep neural network techniques, you'd be 90 years of age before you could actually identify that kind of Diet Coke, whereas you know, the techniques we're looking at, you know, would allow you to identify that much quicker." So I got involved in that project, and again, that's resulted in a spin-out company as well, which is fantastic, called Opteran. And with that project, it's which was based at Sheffield University. A lot of the academics from Sheffield University have now moved into Opteran to run that startup, which is fantastic. And then in Wales, again, a few years ago, I chaired the International Scientific Board for a project for the which was for the Centre of Artificial Intelligence, Robotics and Human Machine Systems, IROMS. And again, that was a very successful project in setting up infrastructure for researchers to do their research at Cardiff. I also look after some PhD students. So I've got an iCase award at Imperial College, which is in its second year now, which is working really well, and I really enjoy that interaction with the student on that kind of very specialist kind of areas. And also towards the tail end of last year, we've set up 2 other iCase awards with Oxford University, and so I'll be involved with that in the future as well. So that's some of the kind of research areas that I get involved with academia, and then there's also institutions. So the UK RI for Research and Innovation. A few years ago, we did a project with again, with Bristol University, another company, a small company called TVS, and then Dyson as the as another member of that team, which was a really interesting project. I also do lots of letters of support for project proposals from the universities to EPSRC when they're looking for industrial support for those project proposals. So I get involved with quite a lot of that as well. And then about a few years ago, I got involved with the was accepted as a member of the Innovation Advisory Council for Wales, and again, where I'm looking at trying to bring my academic contacts to have bearing on some of the decisions that the Welsh government make. So that's really interesting role as well. And we meet with ministers, with the Minister of Economy, Gethin Vaughan, and also with other members of the Welsh Assembly, such as Adam Price from Plaid Cymru. So again, that's a really interesting part of my role. And also I collate information for the House of Commons as well, and for the UK government on technical issues when they put out calls for evidence. Then I collate information from different groups to support that as well. So hopefully that just gives you a flavour for some of the things that, if you're in industry, you can still get into academia and make useful contributions. So on to the next slide, please. This slide just shows you, actually the world's your oyster. So I started off, with my teaching support at Imperial College in London, and then word of mouth gets out, and then you get invited to do other things. So I think I've supported teaching at I think all the Welsh universities and a number throughout England and Scotland and Ireland. And then during the pandemic, my teaching went a bit international as well. So I went through from Canada, Africa, Portugal, China, and also in Australia. As well, so there's lots of opportunities there if you're in industry. The academics are always very pleased when they get industrial input to their work and teaching. So on to the next slide. Thank you very much. So my advice and tips are really, don't worry too much about moving, out of academia. In fact, I would say go for it, because I think you can always go back. I think years ago it was a bit more difficult to tread between, academia and industry. I think that from my experience anyway, that's getting a little bit easier. And also when you go back to, if you were to go back to academia, you've picked up lots of different skills and new technologies, and actually some of the research in industry is more advanced than the research in the universities. So again, the universities will be pleased to have you back. And also the next point is that outside academia, there's lots of opportunities to support, and hopefully I've just shown you some of my work. So there's you can help with the teaching if you're interested in that, or the research, and also you can contribute your expertise to support universities through the institutions and governments. And of course, my last point is there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on in industry. So getting out there and looking at that will give you a very fulfilled job. So that's the end of my presentation. So thank you very much.
Yeah, Rob, that was fascinating. Thank you so much for showing us an exciting journey and how this can actually be a continuous contribution to academic work and universities, along with the expertise that you develop by collaborating with other organizations such as the Welsh government and obviously international institutions.
While we're just waiting for questions to come in, I just wanted to pick up on the last point that Rob made about how much research actually does happen in companies and in industry. We've had speakers in from like Admiral and places like that to sort of insurance companies. They will ask really insightful questions. They will conduct huge bodies of research on their markets, on their customers, and then they will implement that rapidly. And just because it's not coming out in a paper doesn't mean that this interesting research has not been done. And it can mean that things are implemented really quickly. I have aware of someone in the insurance sector came up with a factor that was incredibly predictive for car insurance pricing. That was immediately named after them. This was like 15 years ago. It is still referred to across the industry as the Verdon factor because that's who came up with it. It was implemented straight away and it's been running now for years and is still a really predictive factor. So there is, I think you get to the feeling that research is only happening in universities and it's not. And some of the research happening in companies is fantastic and so exciting, and you can see the results often a lot more quickly.
Definitely. Thanks for bringing this point, and Harriet. And I think Adrian was also mentioning that, in his role, he's been able to see different roles to deliver impact. I don't know if you like to expand on that point, Adrian.
Well, yeah, so I've never formally been a technology transfer officer per se, but technology transfer is like a real passion of mine. It's an interest. So I've just done it as part of whatever role I've been in. And sort of I've possibly made a career of technology transfer without ever being employed to do technology transfer formally. So like my current project where I'm program director, my job is to effectively manage the project, coordinate all the collaborators and that sort of thing. And of course, like I've got a team that does that for me. I set the strategy and, it gets implemented. And that kind of frees up my time to look at how we should be delivering impact and how we can deliver impact. And if you can imagine, so the story I was telling about the village in India, which is, it's a 3-hour drive north of Mumbai. And the last sort of 5 kilometers is off-road. So it's really remote. It's literally in a forest off the beaten track. So, and it's over mountains and stuff. So like it's virtually impossible to put an electrical grid connection into that area, or if you can do it, but it's like really expensive to do it. So it's much easier to put in these sort of lightweight, flexible solar panels that we're developing. So that's what we did. But to get that done, then we've had to engage with Tata Clean Tech Capital. So they gave us some money to do it. We had to engage with sustainable building project managers in India. We've had to engage with electrical contractors in India. We had to engage with the community. So, and then to engage with the community, we need somebody who can engage with the community. So we go through the Tata Institute of Social Sciences in Mumbai, who've got a sustainable community development operation there, researching it. So they've got experts in how to engage with these rural communities who, and these are tribal communities, so they have their own dialects. So you need somebody who can speak with them. So there are all these things that to deliver impact, which is the outcome of technology transfer. You've got to learn about how to engage all these stakeholders, how to find them even. And you just build up these wonderful networks of people and contacts to enable this. So whilst it's hugely challenging, but also hugely rewarding. So my feeling is that there are opportunities either as a researcher or within a different role, wherever you are, to if there's elements of research going on around you, is how you can help transfer that research into meaningful impact.
Thank you, Adrian. And I saw Maria and Rob were nodding. I don't know if you have anything to add to this particular comment.
Yes, yeah. Again, on getting technology, implemented, because the thing is, for example, with the robot, we've got one of the primary algorithms we have from the academic research is an algorithm called SLAM, simultaneous localization and map building. And this is a great algorithm. It allows you to build a map while the robot's moving around and simultaneously locate yourself within that map. And before that algorithm came out, people were either doing localization, so you're given a map and then you have to find out where you are in it, or you were building a map where some being, GPS or something, tells you where you are, and then you build the map. And there were some really ad hoc ways of trying to put these things together. And then these SLAM algorithms came out in about the early 1990s, and then they've been the bedrock of robotics for a generation. And for the robot, we use an upward-facing camera. And we took an algorithm from a fantastic researcher who I still work with very closely at Imperial College, Andrew Davison. He was the first researcher to use a camera to use these SLAM algorithms. And then when Dyson saw this, they thought, right, this is going to be fantastic. We can point the camera upwards, and then in our robot, we can use that system to navigate the robot, which is, is fantastic. But then it took 26 or 27 other equally complex algorithms to work around this thing to make it work in houses throughout the world. So so it's a great, fantastic algorithm, and I love it because of the statistical completeness of it. But again, that still needs all these other algorithms to actually make it work. And then you see it in a product, and it's fantastic. So for researchers, your research, there's a lot of work between university research and actually getting it into products.
Thanks, Rob. And Maria, are you happy to comment, or we could?
Yeah, definitely. Just to further add, I mean, a lot of our customers have products on the market, and obviously they have to go through rigorous safety testing. They can't just put claims on things that say, for example, for allergen testing, it removes, allergens. Well, allergens is a huge umbrella, covers multiple different things. It's not that simple. It's not that straightforward. They need the scientific evidence to back their claims up. And where is that going to get done? They don't always have the capabilities in house, so they go to the specialists, such as for example, our example, we're specialists in allergy, so they come to us for the testing. It doesn't mean just because we've done it in a company that the science is any less rigorous, or will come under any less scrutiny than say peer review. You're talking about people's health and safety here, not just some paper that's going to be read by just a handful of people that are specialists in that area. So I definitely echo what the others have said in terms of there is some fantastic science going on in industry. So just definitely don't overlook that, and definitely don't ever feel like you're selling yourself short just because you've left academia. You can be a great scientist outside.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. We have some questions coming in the chat, and I like to ask Lucy, would you like to raise your hand and speak and ask a question yourself?
Sure. Yeah, basically my question is, well, I have two questions. The first one is about how to get those alternative job opportunities, because when we're in academia, we are very much stuck in the networks of within academia, and I'm not really sure where to look for even what kind of companies would be relevant in my field. So I was wondering how you kind of expanded your network to those other areas. And another one is more of an interest. I'm wondering where you publish your work from, the work you do in industry, and if I could look at those places to expand a bit my knowledge on that. So yeah.
Thank you. Anyone from the panel like to go first? Perhaps.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I think actually there's lots of recruitment companies now that will actually, if you get in contact with them, will actually help you with that transition and give you, and put you in contact with with companies as well. And in my own area, again, you know, because I get to work with lots of different universities. I get to know some of the PhD students and some of the postdocs and things. And then, in fact, we've had quite a few from Imperial that have come actually to work at Dyson to you know, to get that industrial experience, and that are doing very well in the company. And then, as far as publishing is concerned, of course, you know, in industry, you know, you want to keep your crown jewels, you know, for the benefit of the company, and don't always want to publish all your work. But in my own, again, just for me, again, I get involved with some publications, so I'm usually, you know, acknowledged, not as a formal contributor, as a named author, but in the acknowledgements, you know, they say that thanks to Rob Deves for his valuable comments or something on this work. You know, it's that kind of level for me.
Yeah, I'll just chip in too. In terms of where we advertise jobs, we do often share them on our LinkedIn page. So a lot of people will say that they're hiring or looking for people. So I would keep a lookout on LinkedIn. That I think that source is used a lot more widely now for businesses. And again, as like Aaron said, networks and things on that you can make through those, I think are crucial. Also, we do use specialist recruitment agencies, so specialist scientists, scientific recruitment agencies. We found them to be very useful. They can really look for people with the, you know, the right skills that we're looking for, or fit in to the skills we're looking for. So it may be worth signing up to somewhere like that. And in terms of publications, yes, again, like some of the things that we generate internally are proprietary, and obviously we don't want to have our competitors getting everything there. But we work in allergy, and so there is a lot of specialist allergy journals. They're not necessarily all for academics. So a lot of our allergy work gets published in allergy-specific journals, but also in things like Journal of Immunology, Jackie, Journal of Allergy Clinical Practice. So yeah, that's the one thing I would say. Sometimes I look upon as you're a company, so peer review is sometimes harder. And as silly as this is, sometimes if we're working with academics, if you have an academic name on there, you sometimes get reviewed quicker than if you're just industry alone, which again is slightly harsh, slightly reflective of still the fact how, you know, there is this kind of overhang of, well, the best research is done in academia. It's not always true. So yeah, that would be my advice. So look specifically for journals in your field and see if there's anything that comes up with people's names there. You'll see their affiliations, and not all of them will be universities.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with the LinkedIn. If you build a good LinkedIn profile for yourself, then LinkedIn tends to send you job opportunities. I get loads all the time.
And Harriet, you like to add anything else? Or? Yes.
What everyone else said, LinkedIn, that's where I found the welcome job, was LinkedIn. And coming from academia, where when you want to apply for a job, you have to put in a huge statement and craft everything. When I was looking for jobs in biotech, I did just literally, I Googled life science recruiters. I told them my skills. They went out and found jobs. And I had to do very little. I just turned up to interviews. So, you know, Google recruiters in your particular sector and you'll find them, and it's often less stressful. I'm aware a lot of time people, and when they're in industry and they want to change jobs, they'll just ring their recruiter and go, I'm looking for jobs, this is the level of pay I'm interested in, this is the area I'm looking in. And often sometimes, and companies, if you're really interested in a company and you think you have the right skill set, contact them directly, because sometimes they might not be advertising, but they're always looking for talent. So that's another thing that is worth doing if you identify a company that you're very keen to work for.
Yeah, and further from that, as a prospective employer myself, if you do contact people prospectively, do it well. Make sure you attach a CV, attach a covering letter, and explain, make sure you've done your research into that company. The amount of emails I get saying, oh, I'm a recent graduate, have you got a job? That's it. And I'm like, well, I'm not even going to take the time. You know, there's no CV. I know nothing about you. You've probably sent this same email to 100 other companies. It doesn't reflect well. So put the effort in, and really just, you know, even if you just go on the website, see what the company does. For me, if someone says, oh, I'm really interested in your allergy work, you know, instantly I'm like, oh, okay, this person is genuinely interested in what we do. So yeah, if you're looking like just hoping to write to people, really make the effort, and it makes, as a prospective employer, some really like, oh yeah, this person is somebody that I want to spend the time looking into.
Thank you. Thank you so much all, and to Lucy for bringing this question. I saw that one participant had her hand raised. Would you like to contribute, Cole?
That was me. Am I coming through okay? Just want to double check that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thanks for that. I was going to jump in with a LinkedIn comment, but I think we had really emphatic support for that. So I will also agree that's one of the great tools that often gets neglected by academics. They often have a profile that's just kind of a bit dusty and doesn't get looked at much, but it is a great tool, especially if you update it with some relevant skills and interests. The algorithm does really feed you back some relevant posts and jobs. I think for me, I just want to make a comment. Being somebody that's made a similar transition from academia to industry as for example, Maria has, and was in and has been on the journey as well. I just want to echo that there's a huge amount of similarity in my story as well, and those people that are listening to this, wondering whether they can and should come to academia, I come to industry. I think there's an emphatic yes if that's what you feel is going to be right for you. There is no shame, there's no failure, there's no dark side. It's just personally, if you've identified what your core values are, for me it was patient benefit. It may be a different value for yourself, but as long as you're aligned with the core value, then it's okay. Go where that leads you. And I've found fantastic scientists, fantastic individuals in industry, just as there were in academia. So it's not a scary place. It's the change more than anything that is daunting. But you know, I've got a lot of voices here to support the idea that it's a good change if that's the direction that you're heading towards. And so, yeah, I really enjoyed listening to all the comments today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
And I'm aware that we have only 6 minutes, but there was another question that came in the chat. And this is whether you have any recommendations about the extracurricular activities that early career researchers must be doing if they are looking, you know, for this transition outside academia. Perhaps if you could think of 1 or 2 recommendations from your own field that you think can help ECRs to that transition.
Yes, I think there's a couple of global young researchers or young leaders kind of academies come off, and I think the Royal Society run one, and I was lucky enough to be a reviewer for some of the applicants, and again, you know, the quality was fantastic. So again, you know, some of the early researchers could if that, I think that might be a good opportunity to liaise with, you know, other young researchers, but also other people working in industry and, you know, from different fields as well. So that might be one thing they may want to consider.
There are a few, so I mean, depending on where people listening to this are based, they'll be eligible for the Welsh Crucible and the GW4 Crucibles. So those are really helpful and give you a broader view of research, and gets to deal with some real world challenges. It doesn't have to be there's no like hard and fast rules. Try and get, so we've talked about mentoring a bit. but sponsorship is something that's really important as well. So that's not just someone telling you what you should do, it's someone putting you forward for things. And one of the most valuable things that I took part in as a researcher was a special interest group run by Welsh Government to work towards advanced therapies. And that special interest group resulted in a £7 million award. Now, I only had a very small part. There were dozens of people involved in that special interest group. I had a very small role. I mostly went along to meetings and listened to what people were doing, but I met people, I heard what people were saying, and I was able to use that in my CV to say I had been involved in this, I had contributed, I had learned from it. So just any kind of go where your interests take you. You know, if you're trying to build something in you know, communication or public engagement, do things that align to that, do things that interest you, and make it clear that you are up for doing stuff. And hopefully, if you have supportive PIs who will sponsor you as well as mentor you, they can help put you in positions that can be beneficial for you, that you can use to help build your CV in ways that you won't normally just doing, you know, focusing on your research and publishing.
Project management and people management skills are also really things to develop alongside your research or academic activities.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. This is very useful resources and advice. And from our side, I'm happy to say that we will be piloting some sessions about career development. And because we know that ACRs need to have conversations with other mentors and, you know, senior researchers about where they want to go and where they want and where they could, you know, take their careers. So thank you so much, everyone, for having, you know, these conversations and for bringing such an interesting presentations to all our speakers and all the questions that participants have raised. And I think I like to hand over to Kathy because she's going to be closing the event.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara. Thanks for doing such a great job chairing as well. Thank you also to Rob, Maria, Adrian and Harad for your contributions, and to everybody who attended. It's been great to have this conversation about what these other careers and to hear your stories.